Hello, I'm Charlie Brooker and you're watching Screenwipe, a programme all about television. This week, children's television. Now, less like me, you spent your entire childhood trapped in a cupboard while an insane great-aunt held the door shut and kept you alive by feeding communion wafers through the crack in the bottom. Chances are your first experience of television came in the form of kiddie-wink programming. Since children's brains are essentially an undeveloped primordial paste, these early telly memories probably etch themselves on your developing mind as indelibly as knobs and heart signs carved on an old-school desk. And not always in a good way, because sometimes children's telly can be inadvertently frightening. For instance, back when I was a scarcely sentient skin blob, I used to love the programme Jigsaw, a quirky and imaginative puzzle-based show full of light-hearted gags and sketches and madcap inventor Wilf Lunn. But my enjoyment was tempered somewhat by the regular intrusions of Mr. Nosy Bonk. Mr. Nosy Bonk was a sort of leering death-masked figure who was supposed to be gently amusing but wound up haunting my dreams because he struck me as precisely the sort of figure who'd sneak into a stranger's bedroom in the dead of night and knife you, 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 and knife you. Fortunately, the presenters themselves are rarely quite so frightening. Back in monochrome AD, kids presenters were rather stiff and patrician, like a nurse on the cusp of examining you with surprisingly cold hands. These matronly sorts were often paired with a character of some kind, as seen here via the charming antics of Annette Mills and the fondly remembered Muffin the Mule, and the less fondly airbrushed from history Wally the Gog. I'm going back to America. Either that or they were out-and-out slapstick buffoons. Take the apparently lovable, albeit f***ing annoying Mr. Pastry, seen here in more innocent animal-hating times, palling about with some chained-up muzzled bears and giving a lit cigar to a monkey. That monkey's gonna die, oh, Mr. Pastry. Later, as society loosened up, the presenters loosened up too. Although they were still essentially parental, it's just that now there was something vaguely mucky about them. At some point in the 80s, that all changed. Kids presenters transformed into something less parental and more sort of equal. Today, they're not your mum and dad at all. They're more like preppy, half-cool older brothers and sisters. Of course, everyone has a favourite presenter or two from their childhood. I grew up in the 70s or 80s, which was a golden age for the TV presenting polymath. People like cuddly Richard Hammond lookalike Roy Castle, who sang, danced and pratfalled his way through series after series of record breakers in a desperate bid to make dry statistics seem entertaining.
It's 105 centimetres high and it's 131 centimetres long. 10 metres of yarn were used to stitch the world's largest boot, a boot that weighs 31.7 kilograms. How would you like this to come down your beanstalk?
Although it didn't help that for many years his co-host was right-wing political activist and walking fact-shitter Norris McWhirter, a man with all the easy-going charisma of an RS-232 interface cable floating in a bowl of cold piss.
What tree has grown the longest roots and how long were those roots?
What tree has grown the longest roots?
Now, I know that the tree with the longest roots ever recorded is in South Africa.
Yeah, I've got a question, Norris. How many units of my soul have been deleted since you started speaking? One of my heroes was Brian Cant, who brought an eccentric dignity to everything he did, even when he had to crawl around on all fours with toys on his back like a dog. Then there was the absolutely brilliant Derek Griffith, seen here in a jumper that seems to be growing into his head. He was a master of creating simple joy out of absolutely nothing.
4 small ducks went for a walk one day, over the hills and far away. Mother duck said, quack, 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 and only 3 small ducks came back.
Very few presenters are that versatile with their hands, apart obviously from who started his career tossing off around the back of the BBC canteen, as I'm sure our lawyer will agree. Of course, many of today's top TV faces started out as children's presenters. Chris Tarrant, Noel Edmonds, Dennis Nilsson, Philip Schofield, Kat Deely, Dennis Nilsson, Anton Deck, Fern Cotton and Dennis Nilsson all started out on children's telly, apart from Dennis Nilsson. But it's not always easy to make the leap from playtime to prime time. For instance, perhaps my favourite kids presenter ever was Johnny Ball, the eager puppy of science.
Hello!
He'll always be fondly remembered for his quirky educational shows and bright-eyed enthusiasm. And not at all for the programme Johnny Ball Games, which none of you have ever heard of for reasons that will become apparent now.
If you got a high IQ, if you can add 2 and 2, either way the show's for you. Johnny Ball Games. If you're 5 or 93, if you're half an hour free, join
Johnny Ball Games was a bizarre one-off Christmas family game show vehicle for Johnny Ball, a blend of noisy, fast-paced slapstick studio games and achingly slow lateral thinking puzzles. It's possibly the most ill-advised format in TV history. Along the way, Johnny was aided by a live studio band and a quartet of slightly over-eager assistants. Their duties consisted of standing around in the background, awkwardly pretending to help the families, enthusiastically keeping the scores,
Napier's 4, Russell's 6, Williams 2.
and at one point performing an excruciating song and dance number with Johnny Ball.
Can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop dancing. Can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop, can't stop dancing. Can't stop dancing.
A stunning 99% of the show is taken up with awkward pauses, either when Johnny joins the families for a stilted bit of chit-chat,
I'm going to talk and get to know one of those families right away. The Napiers. Come to the table first. You're the Napiers. Dennis, Andrew, James, and Henrietta. And what do people call you?
They call me Hen, Hetty, Henry, Henrietta.
You've got more names than... anyway. But really, Henry, do people... Hello, Henry, when they go to the shops, do they?
Sometimes.
How unusual.
or when they try and answer his mind-mangling lateral questions.
What will be the day before yesterday, tomorrow?
Friday.
Friday's absolutely correct. 2 points.
Anyway, if it's difficult for even a brilliant kids presenter like Mr. Ball to front adult shows, could I, as an awkward and off-putting adult presenter, make the leap the other way? To find out, I toodled along to the studios of Toonattik, ITV's early morning weekend festival of tomfoolery and animation, to see how I'd fit in. First, regular presenters Jamie and Anna gave me some advice. And what was the other thing? Oh, and don't show my bum to the audience.
Don't show your bum and don't swear.
And don't swear. And then I was thrown in at the deep end to try it out. My duties consisted of doing a few cheery links.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Welcome back again up top to your Toonattik, the place to be till 9:25 a.m. I'm Charlie. This is my right-hand man, Jamie.
Absolute mundo.
Then I had to run a quiz. Bring on the challenge chef! Actually, I wasn't too good at getting the rules right for the quiz, but I think I ploughed through without traumatising the children too much.
Say hello to Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie. Hello. OK, there are 60 seconds on the clock, but first I have to ask, do any of you want to play your jokers? Although, do bear in mind that any points you pick up, any minus points you pick up will be subtracted from your score, as well as the ones that I didn't explain. You understand. And then they gave me a little cameo, which they tailored closely to my persona.
you?
Isn't it obvious I'm Angry News Guy?
It's Angry News Guy, everybody.
And which ended in an inevitable custard pie in the face.
Bring on the pies! Here we go. You're Angry News Guy. Hey, Charlie, you're a disgrace. You get up in the morning with pie in your face. You better get ready because the poison and here it comes. The Toonattik pie! Go!
And number 4.
Well done. Do you know what a morning. Have you all enjoyed that?
So what did I learn? Well, not much really, except that presenting for kids is more difficult than presenting for adults because you've got an extra set of rules ticking away in your head the whole time, so it's trickier than it looks. And speaking of kids presenters, here's a veteran, Kirsten O'Brien, telling you about a duo she loves and you don't.